Welcome back to Obscured Reality, Part 2 with our special guest, Jared Turner. All right. Well, so Elizondo, I was going to go into Richard Doty because you brought him up, but you also brought up Elizondo. So I I think there's some very important things going on here that, I mentioned it earlier. I'm not below calling people out for what it appears, in my opinion, because I think the truth needs to be out there. We have, on Obscured Reality, what we've dubbed the PFEs. You always got to look for the PFEs: proof, facts, evidence. It's probably not going to be in that order.
like that.
Order just sounds better as an acronym, but your proof, facts, evidence. You're probably going to start with evidence to get anywhere. And now we see, 2017-ish, these three videos pop up. So here's the brief timeline of what's happened. And we also talk about coincidences. Now you and I, we've not talked much. We talked for quite a while the other night, but we didn't set up a show or anything. It's just all off the cuff. So, whatever it is whatever it is. But we talk about coincidences a lot. I do. And I'm a firm believer that, the number of coincidences it takes before any one person says, maybe this isn't such a coincidence. I would argue it's different for every single scenario. Now, you may have 1,000 different scenarios where it only takes two coincidences, but you don't know that going into it, okay? It's all dependent on how it's set up. You might set up a computer algorithm to, I want you to just go for infinity, and type out 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Keep doing that. And set up another program to do something else mathematical, similar, but maybe a little more intense for that particular computer's power, right? And you might see, boom, they start spitting it out, and the outcome on each 2 plus 2 is 4, and then whatever the other one is correct, and they're consistently spitting out correct info. Now, if you talk about a coincidence of there being an error in either one of those, you would think 2 plus 2 equals 4 is going to be an easier mathematical structure for this PC to figure out. There's this much more structured one. It's going to be more difficult. I would see maybe there's going to be less coincidence that 2 plus 2 equals 4 is going to show up with an error, and maybe, a better chance the other one will. But then you start seeing every once in a while 2 plus 2 equals 5, 2 plus 2 equals something else, and just coincidence, there was an error. But then you start seeing that maybe it was every 20th calculation it came out with an error. That's where you start seeing, it's not a coincidence, there's probably an error in the algorithm. I screwed something up, right? It's going to be different for everything. So Lou Elizondo, 2017, we have 3 UAP videos come out: the gimbal, the go fast, and the tic tac. And months later, this guy, who was at the time a godsend to the topic, seemingly, Lou Elizondo, popped up. I ran a tip. I will argue to this day, Lou Elizondo has never actually given us anything of value other than himself, meaning his name, his background, alleged background, but what people have been able to verify. He's given us ATIP and what ATIP stands for and what they allegedly did. He gave us UAP instead of UFO. We now know the government's been using UAP instead of UFO, which probably accounts for why so many people have submitted FOIA requests. Yep, for UFO, don't get returns, probably by design, which I don't disagree with. So the 3 videos come out, Elizondo comes out. Right around the same time, we're starting to see ads, at least on YouTube or Prime, of a new Bob Lazar documentary by some no-name producer named Jeremy Corbell. Nobody's ever heard of as a producer. And then that comes out at the same time. And when I say same time, I'm talking within a 7-year span. And all these, I'm going as chronological as I can. Probably gonna mess some of it up. At the same time, boom, documentary finally comes out. Then we see TTSA, the To the Stars Academy, that's run by Tom DeLonge from Blink 182.
From Blink 182. Damn it. One of my favorite songs.
Yeah, and this is where I start having a major issue where the coincidences are like, because Tom DeLonge puts together TTSA. It's supposed to be for artists and all this bullshit, but he's doing some major thing with UFOs, and he winds up throwing out some of the wildest goddamn claims you've ever heard. That there's even a conspiracy theorist would probably be like, "What?" And he puts together this unlikely group of 3 to 5 guys, Chris Mellon being one of them, who I do like, I do respect as of now, and I trust.
And I was going to say that when you were talking about Lou, when you started talking about Lou, and the fact that I really want to. I haven't heard Chris. I haven't heard any extraordinary
No,
claims of something that's fact. That, um, but you're right. And according to Tom DeLonge, I think didn't he say they approached him or somebody approached him with the government to bring him in, and just because. And I think that like when his original, um, he's got a lot of knowledge about things that he's interested in and studied in, and he's a smart guy. He's a great artist, but the government doesn't go get the drummer from Leonard Skinner to run your Black Ops program.
well,
And
yeah, I don't know if they approached him or not. We could look into that. I really don't know, but here's my thing: he gets this unlikely group of guys, 3 to 5 guys. 2 of them, I don't know. I don't remember who they were. They were that insignificant to me. But one of them was Chris Mellon, and then a little later, guess who joins TTSA for about a year? Lou Elizondo. Now, I'm looking at this group of alleged 4 to 5 alleged professionals within the government, especially looking at Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo. I'm seeing these professional suits and this guy who talks, walks, and acts like a crackhead running the show, and these 3 to 5 guys join, being completely okay with Tom DeLonge being the face of, not the face of TTSA, because he should be, it's his, fine, but he should at least be the name, but he shouldn't be the one talking for TTSA, because he is not the matchup between this group of 3 to 5 guys and Tom DeLonge, it's totally off to me. There's something major red flaggish about it. I've never trusted it.
there's a fraud going on somewhere here, and
Yeah.
I've always thought that it was with wanting to maintain whatever whatever undescribed line in our budget that you still maintain for this, that. Like when the NIDS guys, when they drug that thing out for 5 years
Yep.
because they were getting paid. And certainly, if you're with the federal government, and anybody with the military that has any type of clearance is not going to put themselves with somebody who is going to go on talk shows or podcasts and talk about it.
Yep.
And this is, it's just, it disappoints me in some people
Yes.
that I had faith in, like Chris Mellon,
Yep.
because I
He's,
believe as
he's the
far
main
as,
one. He's
yeah,
the main one. I now I drop Lou Elizondo out of that scenario and look at the main professional one as Chris Mellon, saying saying myself, how could he let this bullshit continue going? Because this doesn't work with Tom DeLonge.
right. And we're not, it's not like, um, it's not like anyone has led us to anything substantially. I
Nope.
mean, we have no, like, whether it's Lou Elizondo, you're going to come out and you're going to do a whole TV show for years on Discovery Channel or whatever, based on the fact that there was a video of pilots that saw this tic tac, and that they couldn't identify it, and that because it did this and that, and David Grush has all this information, yet we don't hear any of it, and he doesn't come forth with anything. All we want, as the young people say now, just bring receipts, one receipt. All you have to do is just
Yeah.
show me one thing, and then I will stop with my skepticism or
Yep.
my reality. But
And
whether
that
we're
is
talking,
where Lou Elizondo turns into a baby and starts fighting back and getting really defensive. And there's nothing wrong with being defensive. If you're being attacked, um, you would naturally be defensive. I have no problem with that. But he does it in a way now where he's broken down and he's belittling a mass group of people, and which is not what I've seen from him before. And I've lost all respect because of it.
And I'll tell you what, I think the main reason is because when he is attacked, or I would say when he's questioned or when he's called out about something, he is his concern is that he's going to be exposed, and
Yep.
so that's why he's got that fight or flight. If he was dead set in knowing that he saw and he has put his hands on, and this stuff is actually tangible, objective, no doubt about it, then he would laugh at stuff like that when people claim it. But
Yep.
the way he goes about it is so uncharacteristic of anyone that has held a a top secret clearance in the government with that has I mean there's people that lose their clearances all the time, usually it's for a domestic or a DUI or something like that, but
Yep.
the fact is that for him just to be a military person, somebody with integrity, somebody that you would believe in, somebody that when he holds up a picture and says this is a mothership, we're not going to find out 2 days later that this is a picture that somebody pulled up on the internet, and
Yep.
then he's going to because he throws so much ambiguity in there. I thought he was on this
Yep.
talk show recently where this guy's got this makeshift skiff, and the guy asked him about this ball with writing on it that they found in the ocean. And I thought he was setting. I thought it was going to be. I really thought he was setting him up to. Have you ever seen something like this? And if Lou said yes, he would know that he was lying because he had just made it up. I thought it was a setup. It seemed like it, but Lou was so vague in the things. Well, it's
Yes.
interesting. I can't talk about it, but when I was at the Pentagon, we investigated things like this, and not this specific one, but you're never going to get an answer from him. And so, from anybody, if I ask him, "Hey, did you go to the mall yesterday and go shopping and buy a new pair of pants?" and he's going to, "Well, I have been to the mall and I have bought pants and I have, just tell me. It's either you either know it or you don't. It's either you're either telling the truth or you're not." And when he starts getting mad about things, it's like when Rob O'Neill gets questioned about stuff that he is obviously lying about, and why you would have to lie about it, because they'll pull up interviews he gave initially when he first got back, and they're not the same. And these are other operators. These are other um, these are people that respected people from Delta that have
Yep.
called him out. And he gets, you can do that with somebody that's telling a story. That's what I did with the guy and rest his soul, he's passed away now, but I went in on this guy that was talking about Bigfoot, and I just simply stopped him and asked him, "Hey, wait a minute, hold on a second. Tell me, you're saying," and he got frustrated because he was telling the same story over and over again. He had got to where he rehearsed it, and it was like he would add his little bits in here and there. And I told him there was no way that a couple of those things could happen. And then I was looked at as the ultimate non-believer, and you're trying to take, and you weren't, and it was always, well, you weren't there, so you don't know. Okay, well,
You can't fall
we could
back
say
on
that
that.
about,
That's
yeah,
bullshit.
we could say that about anything. Well, you weren't
Yep.
there, you don't
Yep.
know. So, well,
Well, let's finish the timeline real quick, and then I want to go back to something you pointed out because I was going to point that out, and that is the vagueness on Elizondo. So in the timeline, we got now TTSAs formed. We have this unlikely group of 3 to 4 professional um, military grade, Pentagon grade suits, and Tom DeLonge. And then none of them are really saying too much or speaking on behalf of TTSA. However, Tom DeLonge is all over, and he's starting to make claims of we have this extraordinary substance, this something that was found, and it turns out that was from what's that lady's name that does all this stuff? I forget. She's a little older. She had
Linda
some of the
Moulton,
yeah,
was it?
Linda
Yeah,
Moulton Howe, and
yeah.
she's allegedly got some of the stuff. It turns out the stuff they had wasn't really theirs; it was hers. She was working with them, blah blah blah. And then he starts making claims of. I remember this wild claim of, yeah, he's talking like a crackhead, dude. He just, yeah, we're looking at, we're gonna build a massive spaceship. We're going to build it out in space, and it's going to have this propulsion system on it. We're going to be able to go, essentially to the stars, no pun intended. And I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, I'm out on TTSA, and I really want to know why these 3 to 5 guys, 4 to 5 guys joined, because it's a very unlikely pairing. And
That's
then
a that's
we,
a that's a great question. Why
yeah,
they would pair themselves with somebody that is
mhm,
is 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 making these claims, these way past extraordinary claims.
Yeah. So we see Lou Elizondo's there now. He's only there for around a year, give or take. It might be a little more from something I've heard recently, but I'm not sure. It's around a year, and then he drops out. He doesn't say anything to it other than, I fulfilled the role that the reason I joined TTSA. I've fulfilled my duty, so I've stepped out. I'm like, okay, and then we start seeing Corbell hits the scene like he's been on the scene for 50 years. And then George Knapp starts to make a comeback. Now Lou Elizondo's on the scene, the scene meaning the whole UFO scene. Lou Elizondo's now on it, like he's been there for the last 50 years, and everybody knows him. And then we get Mick West starts coming out. I don't know if you've heard of Mick West, but
That was the individual that I was, when we were speaking last week, I was trying to remember his name, but he had come out and fact checked a bunch of things that bizarre.
More than that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Even fact checked what and I have him typed up. We'll go into him in detail, maybe on another show, right? When we start this up again. But what he has a background in video game. Oh man, I'm gonna jack all this up. Basically, building video games. He mathematically is like a whiz, man. He's like a walking brain. He's got a slight arrogance to him, which seems to fit, and people hate him because he's calling this stuff out and he comes off as kind of arrogant. And I've always said, why do you give two shits if he comes off as arrogant, slightly arrogant, majorly arrogant? Is he giving you facts? And here's what he's doing. He's retired. He's taking his knowledge he's ridiculously smart. He's taking his knowledge from how he built video games. He's easily able to apply this to debunking a lot of these. And he starts out those first three, the Gimbal, the Go Fast, the Tic Tac, and all the bullshit videos that Jeremy Corbell has put out. And he's debunked so many of them. And he says, I'm going to show you how I do it. And he does. He'll even give examples and mock up some of his own things once in a while. But all these videos, a lot of them have data on them from the aircraft the videos were taken from. He's like, look, you got the altitude. You got the altitude of this thing down here, or the speed of this thing at least. You got the clouds. We know those aren't moving like 100 miles an hour and then 20 and then 100 and then 20. He's like, so we have consistencies. We have things in the background. And he's built his own program to help do this. And he mocks this up so you can easily see it. And he describes it and goes, all my work's out there. Fact check me. You think I'm full of shit. You think I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. And nobody has, and everyone hates him because he's a little bit arrogant. That's what they're going to pick on. And he's been doing great work on this. And most of what Corbell's put out has been debunked. So now he's on the scene doing this. And, this is our 7-year timeline. And this goes back to what I said earlier. Proof, facts, evidence, the PFEs, and coincidences. So I start with the coincidences and I say, okay, these 3 videos come out in 2017. Okay. And this is all on the topic of Lou Elizondo, because he's the main one I want to talk now before we end it. And then, we'll still go into all this stuff. But the 3 videos come out like, wow, huh? And you're hearing this narrative with these with these videos. And the narrative never quite matched up to a T. And I looked at those videos, and I have experience with aviation. I don't fly planes, but I've been flying simulators since before high school. I've been flying radio-controlled aircraft since before high school. I love planes. I love helicopters. I love helicopters because of the technicality of them and how difficult they are to fly. I'd hate to try one because I don't want to die. And
we got so much in common. That's what I wanted to do when I came home from Iraq was fly helicopters, and I still hold on to that to this day. And I know I would crash and kill myself. I actually bought a mosquito. We'll go into that later. But it was
so.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, go ahead. Mosquito.
Yeah, so I purchased a mosquito, and this was so it's an ultralight. You don't need the thing with me is I couldn't pass a pilot's physical because of my head injury, and so
right.
I had actually done the coursework, and so I had it, and what I did was I took it up, and I know enough now about your loss of tail rotor, your things that you have to do that are counterintuitive to
Yes.
avoid crashing. And doing that, instead of pulling up when you're going down, you have to gain speed, which means you have to be a certain. I was also in the flight path of our Lifestar, which comes and lands on our, and
Uh,
so I don't have the avionics in the Mosquito because
right.
it's not meant, and so I don't see. However, they can see me, and so they show up at my door and they're like, "Dude, look, we love what, but the fact is that this is going to classify as a near miss. If we were 2 miles away and could see you, and you didn't even know we were on our way, and furthermore, it's probably not a. And so I sold it, but that's how much I wanted to. So I didn't mean to get off on that, but yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no,
Back to the.
that's fine. I've been thinking, slightly thinking, not anything too serious yet, about getting into paramotoring because it's going to be the closest thing that's not going to require 150 grand to blow on a pilot's license for a job I'll probably never get because I'm already close to 50.
There you go.
Paramotor would be awesome. So back to coincidences and this whole history of what has happened since 2017 in a super short period of time. We got the 3 videos come out. They're starting to get debunked, especially by Mick West. And then it just so happens, before Mick West, Lou Elizondo comes out. Okay. Coincidence? Sure. Fine. I'm okay with that as of now. One coincidence now. Lou Elizondo coming out after these 3 videos. And then he's talking and yapping and blah, blah, blah. And then we get the ads and the documentary on Bob Lazar by Jeremy Corbell. Coincidence? Yeah, it's just a documentary. I know people have been trying to do this for a long time, but Lazar has been shut down about it. Okay. And I'll take another coincidence there. Totally fine because it's about the topic, but it's about Bob Lazar. It's nothing in depth about anything else. And then Jeremy Corbell all of a sudden is on the scene like he's been there for 30, 50 years. Another coincidence? Now I'm starting to look at it and saying, I don't know if this many coincidences is acceptable for this yet, but I'm starting to question it. And then we see TTSA, and that in and of itself is a coincidence, but a much even bigger and separate coincidence to me is the unlikely pairing of this group of 4 to 5 guys, including Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo, mainly now Chris Mellon, with Tom DeLonge. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Another coincidence. Now I'm really starting to question. And now um, Tom DeLonge starts talking all this crazy crap. Spaceships were gonna TTSA is gonna build out there, and there's Tom DeLonge wouldn't have enough money in the millions he's probably got to be able to do something like that. Now I'm starting to dwindle on the coincidence and thinking there's something else going on. And then from there we see obviously George Knapp starts making a major comeback with this, and then it turns out, oh, he's been friends with Jeremy Corbell for a long time, and Jeremy Corbell saying, oh, he's been a mentor of mine in this, and I'm like, what? He's a ufologist now. And I'm like, wait, I thought Jeremy Corbell was a goddamn producer, so he's a movie producer, but now he's into this. He's a journalist. He's
He
never
met,
been.
he
What?
was turned on to this but through his tattoo artist, to how he got onto the Bob Lazar thing. That's
I
how
wouldn't be
he
surprised.
was. That's what he said. That's how he said he got the introduction to George Knapp and to Bob Lazar and to all them, was
Ah,
through somebody that knew them at the tattoo shop that where he was getting his ink done.
wow.
But what you're referring to as it's what they call conditional probability. So as the coincidences started to stack up, the fact so you know in order for things to happen, you can have a coincidence here, a coincidence there. You can have a couple happen, like getting struck by lightning twice. It's a very rarity, and turns out you're not actually getting struck. You're getting the you're getting shocked, but it's not, the
Right.
bolt isn't going through you. But there now all of a sudden you've got somebody that's claimed. This sounds like somebody that has claimed that they've been struck by lightning in 5 minutes 5 times.
Well,
This is just, these are and so as the coincidences start to mount, now we have to ask ourselves, all right, what have they given us in return? Have they given? I mean, it's not like they're
Right.
providing anything, and it's not like these. What did the Tic Tac or the gimbal do? Did it shoot down one of our planes? Did it attack one of our buildings? Did it crash? No, it went and then went, and
Yeah.
it was something they saw that was extraordinarily But as they start to, now we're going to bring in a radar operator. Now we're going to say it met us at a rendezvous point. Now we're going to, and I don't think that, I think they're saying what they think, but they also know that none of this is factual.
Yeah.
But it takes people like Jeremy Corbell or George Knapp or Lou Elizondo to push it over to where Lou Elizondo will say some shit like, well, with my clearance and things I was exposed to, and I do know this, and I do know that we have this and we have that, and I'll go. And if you don't believe me, then you go do it. You go, and I'll be fine with that. And he knows good and damn well what
Oh yeah.
he's
Yeah.
when he's bullshitting. And
Yeah.
so and
Well, yeah.
that frustrates me because somebody from the like somebody that's to me, I start to take that as he's talking to us like we're stupid and like he's
That's where
and
he's
I,
going now.
yep.
Well, so I mean, we don't even need to go more over the timeline again. That kind of proves the point right there. The coincidences and exactly what you just said, they're starting to stack up with little to no return. Like I said, I'd argue Lou Elizondo is the only one who's actually given us anything, and he's given us a lot without actually giving us a lot. He's given us himself, his name, his background. He's given us ATIP, what it means, and what they allegedly did, and it's not even really, I don't think, proved yet that ATIP was true, was a real program, and then he's given us UAP. Other than that, he's given us nothing. So I think all that kind of goes and proves the point. And now back to something you said, the vagueness. That was something I wanted to bring up as well. Lou Elizondo has been so damn vague in everything he says. And one of his famous things, famous to me, because I see it every time he talks, man, he opens his mouth. People ask him, they'll get down and actually try to dig a little bit at least, and they'll ask a good question. And he'll pause for a second, put his hands together, and he's, yeah, and get
like
a
he
grin. Not a grin, not like a shit eating grin, like I'm going to lie to you, but like uh,
like he
yeah,
want he's hurt. It seems like he's confused as or not confused, but he's wants to tell you the truth, but he wants to tell you, but that's how he's acting. Now he is
he's
acting.
oh yeah, he's acting.
Yeah,
I think he's just simply thinking of how do I keep this vague, and he does that, those motions and the facial expressions, and then what he turns to almost every time that I've seen is, well, let me say it like this, as if he was gonna say it one way, but let me say it this way. And it doesn't matter because every time he says it the other way, whatever way is true or not true, or he was going to, it's vague every time. He never once gives you anything. Everything he says, he leaves open ended for you to decide. And I have major problems with this because this is what he's done the whole time. So many people have come to their own conclusions based off what he said, and he's left everything so open, I think, for a reason, which is in 3 years from now, someone can come back, well, Lou, back in 2019, you said, and he's going to be like, oh, hold on, hold the door open. Did I say that? Here's what I actually said. You came to that determination. I didn't specifically say aliens were real. People have asked him his straight up opinion. What do you think's going on? Put ATIP aside, whatever. What is it you think's really going on? Do you think it's life from somewhere else? And it's, well, let me say it like this, and he still won't even give you an actual honest opinion.
and he could. And the sad thing is what I know for a fact is he could give you his opinion and still not divulge anything
Yep,
classified or top secret. But he
yep.
hangs on to that caveat of well, the whole government Pentagon. I can't talk about this. I'm above you. You're down
Yep.
here. I'm up here. I have knowledge that you don't have. He knows full of shit.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm again, I go back to I didn't mean to jump in there. It's
No,
just he. It's just whether we're talking about that moneymaker And whether we're talking about Bob Lazar, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, Skinwalker Ranch, the UFOs, that ball they found down in Colombia that
Yeah,
they
the
didn't
bootleg
find,
here.
the little drone that nobody got radiation poisoning from,
Yep.
all this stuff, everything that they're claiming, everything they're saying, what have they shown? I mean, the
Oh
first
yeah, nothing.
question any investigator would ask is, what have they given us on the positive side to where we could say, okay, but he did provide this. And
Yes.
all I can say is that, you can't take something that I mean, the good thing about Nick West is I did see something where he showed a line of, of planes or somewhere or another where Bob was describing looking down the hangar and it wasn't possible the way he had, but I knew at that point that this person at least knew what he was talking about enough to
Oh
debunk
yeah,
something that was. And so, but I
very
mean,
smart
from
guy.
a practical standpoint, I will say that show us one thing that, I mean, you don't even have to show us the bad stuff about George Knapp lying on the Skinwalker book. That there's not, that were just fictitious stories is all they were. You don't have to just show us something positive, and there's nothing, whether it's UFO, and they always fall back on, well, the government's keeping it from you. Well, first of all, these people, the government that would be doing this is not going to go on podcasts, is not going to have a Discovery Channel television. They're sure as hell not going to go out with Tom DeLonge. When they asked Travis
Yeah.
Barker about Tom DeLonge, and he looks at him and grins and smiles, and he's like, "You all don't know how crazy Tom DeLonge is, do you? He's smart, but he's nuts." And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
I
you're
mean,
you're you're touching on something that I wanted to get to earlier and forgot about. And oh man, what did you just say? The government going on podcasts, and this again, all Lou Elizondo here. This is a whole nother big thing that I will admit I don't have knowledge on. My knowledge is from everything I've heard here, right? This type of stuff, what I've looked into with Elizondo and all that. But some of the things he says, governmentally speaking, I have no knowledge on, and I would love to have some. Here's my problem. Um, he's said a few things such as, so he's coming out with this alleged information which is ridiculously vague anyways, and it's never really much of anything. If ATIP is real, and if the government has been using the acronym or the term UAP this whole time, um, Lou Elizondo's always said when he talks about things, um, well, number one, two problems. Um, well, I can't talk about this because of my NDA, which I understand, or I can't talk about this because of my NDA and my security clearance. That I question for a reason, which we'll go into in a minute, maybe. But he has said, I'm talking about what the government, the Pentagon, I think he references Pentagon, whoever he has to contact, they've cleared me to talk about this, this, and this, but not this stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, he said he never got in trouble for disclosing the alleged group ATIP, UFO, looking into UFOs, which I would argue any major country, any major government would have a program like ATIP because they want to know what's in their airspace, and pilots see it, like military pilots, they don't know, they couldn't pick out what it was, and they got video, send it to them, they'll look into it to verify it's not an adversary, right? Get it. And I would think anyone would have that. And he goes into these things, and he says that, well, they've cleared me to talk about this, this, and this. And I would argue that even if ATIP wasn't classified, which is why he didn't get in trouble for exposing it, even if the term UAP wasn't classified, which is why he didn't get in trouble for exposing it, when he when he submits his info to the Pentagon, whomever this is, that's going to tell him what they're going to clear him to talk about everything that he submitted, or say you can do this stuff but not these three things. Even if those things weren't classified, would they really still allow him to talk about ATIP? Would they still really allow him to mention UAP? And I don't see any way in hell that they would still allow that. If they do allow it, that would mean this is true. If they did allow it, then it's either
Well,
part of a disinformation campaign or um, a slow rollout of UFO disclosure, which is the other storyline that they're all tracking on now, trying to say, oh, this is just part of UFO disclosure, blah, blah, blah. So Elizondo is nothing more than a plant from the government.
I,
And yeah, go ahead.
no, I wish, I, I wish, I wish that it was something that I could say. Well, maybe the government, maybe his real position is to get information out to to to
Push them, maybe?
To fool the Soviets
Mm,
and the Chinese to think we have technology
right.
that we don't have. And so maybe that's it. But the fact is, when you listen to him in interviews, he's not smart enough to do that. He's the way he responds, the tantrums, the way he is vague when he doesn't have to be vague. Now,
Yeah.
somebody like Andrew Bustamante, who is very articulate
Is that
and
the CIA guy with the long
yeah,
hair?
yeah,
Oh, I like
and
him.
he
He's
and
awesome.
yeah, and I don't agree with some of the things that he says about him getting his family ready to in 10 years be gone from the
Yeah.
U.S. because it's going. I don't, and I don't also don't think that. But I do know this: the way he articulates things, the way he conveys his message, the way he answers questions. I never get the sense that he's lying to me,
Nope.
or
Nope.
that he's lying to the public, or that he's embellishing something. Lou thinks a lot of himself. The more I hear him, the more I watch him, and I watched him in that skiff or with that fake skiff, the podcast guy the podcast guy did a great job in trying to ask questions, but you could sit the way that you could tell the podcast guy was looking at him and didn't believe what he was saying, or at least it appeared that way, because I sure as hell didn't believe what he was saying with some things. And
Yeah.
he didn't give us one, like, you can't go back and watch a 3 hour podcast to where you can write down one factual thing that he said to where we could go research it and pull it
Yep.
up and find it.
Nothing.
And it's
It's all
all,
vague.
yeah, it's all this, well, they won't let me talk about it. It's like when they say, well, he works for the government. Well, they won't disclose his information, so you'll never know about it. Well, he's not going to go out here and, people like that. And the one thing I wanted to mention real quick before we get off here, is, is the Mossad. So I don't want to cross the line and go into a religious thing.
No, Mossad is they're the like is it what like the
Israeli,
FBI or CIA equivalent in
yeah, they're the Israeli
yeah, okay.
intelligence agency, but
Yep.
the Mossad. So if you look at the Israelis, um, their capabilities. So of course the funding that we give them, the military equipment that we give them, the training that we give them. The thing with the Israelis, and whether it was with Benjamin Netanyahu or his brother Yanni or all the missions they did, they have the reputation for pulling off some of the greatest raids in Uganda with Idi Amin, is because, number one, they have the balls to do it, and number two, just think about the mindset and the foresight that it took to have this pager, and these and
Oh,
the and the
they
backfill
have
and
patience.
the patience.
Patience.
And so they don't. I mean, when they conduct an operation, um, whether it's going in South America and getting former Nazis and bringing them and putting them on a plane, or whether it's going to, they went to Munich during the Olympics, and their SEAL team equivalent
Yep.
and the Germans didn't want them to have, and the Germans went up there and tried to do shit while the television cameras were on and screwed everything up, got everybody killed. Fortunately, the Germans are a lot better now, but I'll say this: the Mossad is not going to, if Stephen Greer, or if I've heard this about Jeffrey Epstein and what, they don't. You could go your whole life and your neighbor, be and you would never. They don't. They are so dedicated to. It's like how Chinese people are first to their country, even if they're Americans, or if they're dual citizenship. They always have a loyalty to their
Of course.
yeah. With Mossad, Now, I don't agree with everything that they do, but I do agree with the fact that they do what they have to do, and
Yeah.
they have the. And if you look at, I won't get into this, but they were Iran was actually mounting nuclear warheads to launch to Israel, which is why this happened. These events happened when they did, but that's because they had Mossad in Iran, in like way in enemy territory. They're so good at what they do that they're not going to let somebody like if Stephen Greer. Usually it's just a it's just a well it's but I can tell you this, it would shock me if 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 he were working for an agency, any agency, and he just it's just there. People in our agency are so disciplined that they don't divulge that because they know the ramifications of divulging it.
Right.
Um, and if there's an interesting podcast where Andrew Bustamante sits down with John Kiriakou on the Concrete web podcast, and they
Mm-hmm.
go at it, and they actually have an argument about. He's like, you knew when you told that reporter what was going on. This wasn't whistleblowing. You knew you were breaking the law. Why would you do that?
Yep.
And John Kiriakou for the first. I mean, he you know he's just not right in what he says about the water
Yeah.
the waterboarding when he says KSM was waterboarded 183 times. That's how many pours it was waterboarded 3 times. Little things that he's just not and so but Andrew Bustamante and it's because Andrew Bustamante no longer works for the CIA but no longer claims nothing he talks about is CIA is like well I know when there's a difference in Andrew Bustamante and Lou Elizondo. Lou wants
Right.
people to think that he is actually that he's more important than what he is, and
Yes.
I think that's the ruse he keeps up, and the way he answers questions. I mean, any seasoned investigator, you put him in a room with any municipal law enforcement investigator, and they would tear him up as far as
I'm sure.
asking questions and then asking him to, and then you just go backwards with it. Okay, we got the timeline now. Take me backwards. Tell me from here back, and then you'll start to see shit unfold.
To see it
And,
unravel. Yeah.
yeah, it happens with whether you're dealing with a psychopath or a sociopath or some of the best liars in the world that can keep their pulse low and they don't even they still will get tripped up. And so
Yeah.
it's frustrating that whether we're dealing with all of those people, everything we've talked about tonight, there's a whole bunch
Mm-hmm.
of other stuff that I still have to. So hopefully in the next podcast we can cover some
Yep.
things. But I hope that by the next podcast I'm able to answer some questions that you have based on my which is why, and I need to do a better job of not just. Uh, I mean, these are things I'm interested in certainly, but I need to do a better job of not just talking, and instead, when you ask me based on your knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience, what do you see in this? And I
Yeah.
tell you what I see in that. So that's why I try to, with Bob Lazar, how do we get from whether it's learning geometry? Hey, when am I going to ever have to sine, cosine? When am I ever going to have to prove that this angle is this? No, you're taking a theorem, and you're proving it by going logically down the steps. And it's the
Yeah.
same way and once people understand that, once you get practically out and, and another reason about the logistics of what it would take to have pulled off the Sierra Sounds if they were real is so extraordinary that they know that. So anyhow,
Yeah.
we'll
Well, I mean, I mean, you're obviously a very smart guy, and just I wouldn't complain about you know you talking about things because um, your knowledge comes out in everything that you say, and you're giving tidbits here and there of this is exactly right, or this is how I would wind up investigating it with no question, you know. And I mean, I'm going to mention something right now, which I'm sure you're going to talk about at some point. I'll probably question you on too. Is this is the problem with people like Elizondo, Stephen Greer, is nobody knows them. There's no baseline to go off of, and that's part of what they're betting on.
and if anybody ever checks them, it's, well, the government's, they're bad. This cause, they're not going to tell you this. The government's not going to tell you. They fall
Yep.
back on that, and that's a red flag. And
Yes.
the it's it's just it's frustrating because, and I will leave you with this. The same law professor that said we live in a world of probabilities, not possibilities. So I'm teaching a class to supervisors on ethics and leadership, and we're going over evidence, and somehow or another, somebody in the class raises his hand. And you always get this with police officers; they always want to challenge something because it's the only thing. It's a tough. We
Yeah.
can be some of the most immature people at times. So a guy asks, he says, "Okay, so what if I get on the scene and somebody has stabbed someone with an icicle and the icicle melts? Now what do I do?" And so I asked, I did what the law professor that taught me and taught us. Every time somebody would ask a way out there question, well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? Well, and then I put it to the class. Hey, what are the odds of this happening? So why are we
Right.
discussing it? I mean, the odds of this happening, there's nothing you could do about it. But to think that somebody sat there and thought of that just to try to stump, and that's all it was. But I would put this to people that think some of this stuff is real or that believe some of this stuff. I would put it to the public, or to just the general people, general everyday Joe Blow citizen who doesn't have anything invested in it. They might want to believe in it or not, but go out there and find somebody that has something. And until someone walks something up on my front door step
Yep.
and rings a doorbell and says, "Here is the alien with Bigfoot, a vessel, and 17 gimlins or 17." I got, but now Bob Gimlin and Patterson on my mind.
Yes.
Gimbal and Tic Tacs, and they lay all this stuff, and it all starts doing all this crazy stuff. Until then, there's nothing tangible that any of this stuff has ever given us.
Right.
And I don't think that between now and the time that I pass, or the time that my son, I don't think, it's not like all this stuff just going to come. I mean, what are they going to do? They're just going to have an open house at Groom Lake and say, "Come and see," and we'll have a tour of the whole place. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because we have things there that I'm a true believer in. The public doesn't need to know everything that goes on,
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
because some of the stuff regarding national security is it's not for the public to know about. And there's some things that we do that we have to get in bed with for different reasons. That it's for our own safety and our own security. That
Mhm.
that some people just wouldn't understand. But
Yeah.
the fact is that um, until they give us something, um, and remind me next time I'll talk to you about. Uh, I sent you an email about uh, the attorney that represents them, who I don't never want to pull him into this, because as an attorney, he's making sure that a whistleblower doesn't say something that's going to get
Right.
him hemmed up
Right.
and sent to prison, versus he's never advocating that there are craft motherships in this
Yeah.
picture that Lou Elizondo's holding up. Um, and I do want to look to see if Tom, I know I saw that somewhere where he said he was approached, but I'm going to find that out
Tom
for the
DeLonge.
next time. Tom DeLonge, I think it seems
Me
like it
too.
was Joe Rogan, but I'll look and I'll find that, because I want to make sure I'm accurate when I say that maybe it was just somebody gave him the idea or whatnot, but nonetheless,
Approached by who do you think were you thinking?
it seems like, and as soon as we're done, I'm going to go right to Joe Rogan and find out if it was on his. I believe that was where he told the story about how he was approached to 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 jump into this group and to develop this, and to actually, which is why he parted ways with and still
Okay.
does some appearances. But that's how this whole thing got. Because
Okay.
Joe asked a simple question. Why would they come to you with all
Yeah.
the trained personnel we have in our military and our government, our CIA, and
These
our
4 or 5 guys could have done this themselves. They don't need Tom DeLonge other than for money, and they didn't
well,
really need that for this
yeah, and if it's still if
or his
Tom,
following.
it's not like Tom DeLonge has has what some people would call fuck you money, where he's got so much
Right.
that it doesn't. I mean, he's done well with that as
Yeah.
a musician, but it's not like he's got enough money to fund trips to. He's not got Elon Musk money,
Oh,
so that's
right.
now if I could see Elon funding something that they would, but I'm gonna check on that because I never want to say something without
Yeah, of
knowing for a fact
course,
that I've researched it. But
of course.
I thought he had, and I'll look at that.
Well, let me leave you with one question here. Just because I mentioned it earlier, has to do with Elizondo. See if maybe you can shed any light on this. One of the issues. We'll keep this short too. Um, one of the two things he always says, the biggest one is, well, I can't talk about that. And you hear this like in the UAP hearing as well as some interviews. I can't talk about that because of my NDA. I get that he says the most. He has since started saying a few times, either I can't talk about that because of my NDA and or my security clearance. Now here's where I'm going with this is, if you can't, if he's really into something, I can understand you can't talk about it because of your NDA, whether you still are employed by them or long gone. However, the security clearance is where I have an issue because he quit. Okay, he got into a little scuffle with his boss allegedly at ATIP and an argument, and he's since come out and said, "Well, um, this is what us military, us government guys do. You realize you're not right for the role anymore, and it's just not working for you. You just get out." And I would argue, no, I've never heard anyone say that. You don't just get out. What you do is you might approach your superior and say, look, this isn't working out. I want to get out. Is there somewhere? I want to let this time go look around to place myself somewhere else within the Pentagon, the government, the military, whatever. But he keeps mentioning the security clearance now. And I'd argue, well, you quit. You no longer work for them. You then outed their alleged ATIP program. You outed the term UAP, which they clearly didn't want us to know about. Um, so why does your security clearance matter? Because I understand maybe you can use that with some third party contractor that does contract work for the government where you may need a security clearance, or you're looking to get rehired with the Pentagon. However, if I were your superior and we had a little scuffle because you wanted it this way and I'm saying no this way, and you say, okay, F it, I quit, and then you clearly, we also know that Elizondo had said those three videos, Gimbal, Go Fast, Tic Tac, that originally came out in 2017, he said those had come across his desk and that he is the one who submitted those to the group that looks into reviewing for declassification. So if any of it's true, he had a hand in that getting declassified, which shows that this was a setup from the beginning. But the security clearance, as a superior, I would say, well, he didn't do anything technically wrong. However, he did out our program that wasn't classified, so we can't nail him on that. He outed UAP, which wasn't classified, so we can't nail him on that. But I'm going to mark down in his file, since I can't just say not rehireable, I'm going to mark down in his file, this guy cannot be trusted. Here's what he did. Um, I would argue his security clearance doesn't matter, regardless of what third party company he goes to or trying to get back to the Pentagon. Why would that matter? Does it matter? Could it still matter with what he's allegedly done?
So
I know nothing about it.
so for so I do know. So this let's just take a CIA officer for example. When they retire or when they leave, um, and and usually if they leave the agency, it's for reasons that are on good terms. Um, the biggest benefit to them is that security clearance that goes with them. Now, it goes with them providing that they can show a regular use of it and a need for it, and they'll do work periodically here and there with it with different with the NSA. They'll do contract work here or there, maybe for a couple months here or
Right.
there, but enough to use that because that's the big thing. That's what Trump had threatened to take away from them because a lot of them were abusing it. And now here's the problem with Lou Elizondo: that when he starts saying things that he's saying, and when he starts behaving the way he's behaving. And I just say that as far as that's not somebody who he doesn't have a fundamental right to keep that security clearance. That's a privilege for him that they allow him. They go through and mark and make sure that he hasn't done. But for him to get on there and claim that he's divulged this and he goes on these different, unless we're all just duped or unless he's just putting out information so that the Soviets can think that we have something we don't, which
Right.
is Lou wouldn't be the person Andrew Bustamante would be the person that would. I mean, he's somebody who was capable of handling that type of responsibility.
Makes sense.
For Lou, and now as far as an NDA, NDAs are common in with businesses and with companies in the private
Mhm.
sector and in the government. If you sign it, if there are NDAs that you sign, you certainly you abide by them. But
Yeah.
they don't like. So take my dad for example with the FBI. When he retired, they sat him down, and this was the DOJ, so the Department of Justice attorneys come and they sit down with him and they go over his entire case file and they say, so in your career, X, let's go down your line. There's 125 different things that were sensitive that you were part of. These 7 things you can never write about. You can never talk about. If you do, we're not gonna. You don't have to worry about going to jail. We're gonna drag you through court to where it will
We're gonna
bankrupt
ruin
you and
you.
your family. Yeah, we'll ruin you, and we'll ruin you financially. We'll ruin your
Yep.
family financially. And they actually specifically they say that because they mean that, and that's why John Kiriakou settled. Because they told him, listen, we dragged this on. You're looking at $1.5 million you already owe your attorneys, and this thing, we're getting ready to drag this thing out for another 5 years. So guess what's coming, whether you think you're right or not. And it turns out that he wasn't exactly what he did wasn't whistleblowing. He didn't. There's a procedure for whistleblowing. Anyhow, but going back to Luke,
But they're
with
still
it,
dragging him out and
yeah,
ruining him financially.
and that's what they would do. So as far as him being in violation, um, he's already going on TV shows and talking about you've seen
Yeah.
this and just the way and I'll use this word, the way he insinuates things without saying them is the same thing I
Without
told you in the beginning about always giving yourself, like in Sun Tzu, that golden bridge. Always give the enemy a golden bridge to retreat so you don't back them in a corner and then they end up doing something that shocks you and overwhelms you. And it's the same way
Yep.
when you're undercover and you're talking to bad guys and they say, well, wait a minute, we just investigated this. We just pulled up the media guy for Colorado. You never played football there. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, I did play football there. So you're looking at the Lettermans, and and I was injured. And so, but I was on scholarship there, and you can call this coach and ask this coach. And by that time, you always give yourself an out. And that's what Lou does with being vague and
Yes.
almost like it's almost comical and cheesy to watch him do the whole. Let me say it
Well,
like this. Well,
yeah.
let's just and then he'll kind of give it that. It's almost like he wants to wink at somebody to let them know that, hey, listen, if and and this is another red flag. The last thing for him to say it came across my desk. This whole thing about him being more important, like if there are UFOs, they send it to Lou Elizondo, and then he
Well,
distributes it out. And
to
so,
the ATIP group, he happened to be allegedly running it, and that's why final word would be, hey, these are nothing. We can submit them for declassification. So he reviews it, submits it to the other group to review for declassification. Which I'd also argue there'd be no reason for those to be real, true, legit UFO videos that they don't know what they are, because if they were, he wouldn't have submitted them for declassification because they would have said, fuck off.
and not only that, but do you think that he would, if he had that type of access, do you think he would stand up there in front of a group of where he's being videotaped and show a picture of something and call it a mothership or show a field
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be a shadow taken from a plane above that do you think he would? I mean that when the government wants something like this done, they have the resources and the means to do it
Yeah.
without it,
Right.
without somebody being able to go on and pull it up the
Yeah.
picture on from. Oh well, this wasn't the embassy in Bulgaria or in Europe. Um,
Yep.
so it's
Yeah.
And those are the little fuck ups that he makes that makes trained people see him and think, you sorry son of a bitch.
I question
But
if they're even screw ups. I think he doesn't care because I think he's at least smart enough to know that a huge chunk of people are going to believe him enough for him to make a name for himself and hopefully make money off this. Even belittled, hey man, geez, when I quit, I even had to take a job at Target for a year or two to support my family. I'm like, okay,
he's the more stuff that comes up
yeah,
about that. But
yeah,
yeah, he's and I wouldn't say he's smart enough. I'd say he's arrogant enough. Um,
yeah, yeah.
he because
Been telling,
he thinks a lot of himself, or at least he thinks very little of the people that he's
yep,
telling these things to.
right
So
there, right there.
that's a
Well,
good place to.
let's close it out. Definitely 100%. All our pleasure to have you on. Very intelligent guy. Your background is, I think, besides just great, it is great for looking into these types of things. Um, and definitely quite a bit more, I think, to talk about. If you're willing to come back on, that would be great. We're already gonna, guys, we're probably gonna split this up into 2 episodes, which is good. Um, and I would highly recommend you listen to what Jared Turner is telling us because he's got a lot of info from experience. And I think a lot of what you've said is related to things we've said as well. You know, when you're looking at these things, I don't have the background knowledge. It doesn't mean you can't do it. Um,
Right.
a simple question in your brain about, I'm questioning that. Well, look on the realistic side rather than the fake side, I think. Like, share, subscribe. We're going to split this up. You'll see him twice as of now, and hopefully he comes back on. I think you will.
Definitely.
And
Absolutely. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, thank you.
I look forward
Um,
to the next time.
we'll if you want to stay on for a minute, I'm going to go
Yep.
ahead and close it out. Everybody, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check back with us often for new episodes. Feel free to drop a comment and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Obscured Reality.